r/Nosleep, posted by Reddit user ChristianWallis. I'm a hotel manager, and I wish our guests would stop using the mirrors. You know, I've done this job for a long time, and I've had some tremendously odd guests, including one guy who wheeled in a taxidermy dog into a reception area. I kept telling it to sit and behave. In fact, I have a long list of truly strange people who visited my hotel, and it's a great way to make small talk at a party, because we all love a good story about creeps and weirdos. When I speak to other people in the hospitality industry, there'll always be a swapping of stories. But in some ways, it's never quite right. Recently, I had one guy from a few town over say, "I have these two main concerns with each new guest. What mess they will leave, and when will they try and attack me?" And I laughed because it's true. It's not the whole truth, at least not for me. Because my main concern isn't someone leaving behind smelly sheets. It's that sometimes, around once or twice a year, at least one of our guests will never actually check out. They just vanish. It's gotten so bad now that every day I sit and wait, watching whoever comes down the stairs, hoping that everyone due to check out actually checks out. It's not that it happens often, just that when it does happen, we know there's going to be a tough few days ahead of us. It's the cleanup, you see. First time it happened, I wondered if maybe there was a pervert convention around the area or something. I know that there are some people out there who get off on knowing the others are cleaning up their mess, but it's not like that. I mean, it'd be one thing if we were going in there and finding crunchy towels and a DIY Pollock in the shower, but it's not. It's worse. We had one yesterday. It came time for 12 o'clock, and like normal, about a half dozen or so of our latest guests came down, ready to check out. Like always. Except, one guy didn't. I had to pull up his file just to remember his name, and the reception gave me a half-decent description. I got the lift to the 14th floor with a dry mouth and a nervous stomach, hoping to God he just overslept. But when it came time to knock on his door, there was no response. Sure enough, the room was empty and in a terrible state. I stepped over the ripped-up carpet, ducked below the torn-out ceiling fan, and tried not to retch at the smell and the revolting mess in the corner. The bed had been flipped and turned into some kind of children's fort, except the bedroll within was soaked in blood, and every mirror in the room had been smashed. When I walked up to the patio door, it sprung for a room with a view. I noticed bloody streaks by the handle, and a few torn fingernails on the floor. I hate it when it happens. I hate it not just because it takes a week or two to repair the damage, and not just because some guy skips out on the bill, and not even because I have to call the cops who never seem to take me seriously. I hate it because of the tally. Almost everyone does the tally. Sometimes it's scratched on the floor with a loose screw. Sometimes it's written in blood or other stuff, over whatever paper they brought with them. But it's always there. Dozens and dozens of tallies, stacked up in counts of 5. Sometimes it'll be as few as 20, sometimes as much as 800. Still not sure what they're counting. One time I found a photo. I didn't show it to anyone because, well, it made no sense, and I didn't want to freak anyone out. This guy, a photographer, he had booked a room after we hosted a wedding there. He took the pictures and stayed and had a few drinks, and spent the night in room 704. I remember he gave out a Polaroid camera to some kids and let them run around the reception, taking photos of everyone. He told me he was going to put them in a book and send it out to the couple, and I thought that was a pretty cute idea. Except he never left in the morning. And, sure enough, the room he stayed in was torn to pieces, and all the cameras he'd taken were smashed to bits on the ground. The tally, this time scratched into the bedroom tiles, went up to 73, and there was a whole bunch of Polaroids burnt to a crisp close by. One, however, had survived, slipped into the crack of a window, and it showed the wedding photographer. His face was close to the camera and all blurry, and his eyes were glassy and bloodshot, with tears streaming down his cheeks. Somehow, he'd grown a beard. There was a look on his face that he was thin, super thin, and I don't know, he just looked insane or maybe terrified. He looked like a meth addict, his eyes fixed on something behind the camera. Things like that can make me question my sanity. That photographer had torn the soles of his shoes free and tried chewing on them. And the guy from yesterday had jugs filled with his own fermenting urine. One woman years ago had even grown cress in the toilet cistern. I had to tell people that she had brought it with her. It helps that we have so many weirdos, because if any of the younger staff ask or hear any rumors, I just shrug and blame it on the crazies. But I'll admit that me and some of the older staff know better than that. That's why only a few of us handle the cleanup. It's not right to send a younger person to clean it all. When you find diaries filled with these notes about how they fended it off and how it wasn't going to win, when you read the desperation in their notes and the messages they leave the loved ones, or find their excrements filled with chewed up remnants of their pillow stuffing, or the makeshift weapons made out of smashed up furniture, it stays with you, and over time, it starts to mess with you. I spent years hoping it was all an elaborate prank. It was the way they all described being trapped in their rooms and the sun never rising. I just know that it can't be possible. It just can't. But I don't know what to think. I mean, could that guy have climbed out the window and shimmied down 6 stories of a gutter piping? Sure. Someone out there could be capable of doing that. But I doubt he did. And it's not uncommon for me to find signs of suicide. I'm talking blood-soaked baths, gory razor blades nearby, vomit filled with dozens of half-digested pills, even bloody and frayed nooses that are hanging off half-torn-out lights fixtures. How does any of that make sense? How does anyone lose that much blood and not leave a body? I live here in my own room, and sometimes I wonder if the guys will come in and find nothing but a tally to mark my disappearance. It terrifies me. The things I've been seeing in the mirror lately when I wake up make me consider therapy. Sometimes it looks like there's a hand pressed up against the glass. Other times it looks all dark and I just catch a glimpse of a face in the void, screaming and crying and all gaunt with hunger. Other times, it's like I'm looking down the sickly green waters of some lake, and just beneath the surface, I can get a glimpse of shifting shadows. And every now and again, there's a hand, often pressed up against the glass, sometimes looking like it's gripping the very frame of the mirror. It's not a human hand, just these long black fingers in the darkness I can barely resolve with my groggy, sleep-deprived eyes. Every night there's something new, and it never makes much sense. Once I woke up, and I swear, I watched a small ball come rolling right out of the mirror and onto my floor. I fell back asleep straight away, but sure enough, come morning, there it was on my floor. It reminded me of the kind of thing you see in a child's ball pit. But the worst has to be the tallies that I occasionally wake up to, drawn on the mirror, sometimes in soot, sometimes in lipstick, sometimes in rusty brown of dried blood. Every time I leave the room and come back, they're always gone. Something I'm secretly glad of, if I'm being honest, because otherwise, I wouldn't be able to wipe them away. You see, they're drawn on the other side of the glass. I've taken down a lot of mirrors in this place, and I'm not sure that, if anyone were to ask, I'd have a concrete reason why. It's just they're always smashed to pieces whenever someone disappears. And sometimes, people make weird complaints. One girl came storming down the stairs, screaming about us all being perverts. She made a huge deal about the creep on the one-way mirror and the breathing she heard. But even when I pointed out that the mirror was on the wall that faced the 7-story drop, she still wouldn't believe it was just the mirror. She was convinced someone was on the other side. "You're sick," she told me. "The whole fucked up game you're playing with me is sick." And with that, she left. Sometimes, I think she had the right idea. Another time, a guy came down screaming about the woman in the parking lot. He grabbed me and told me that she was out there, wandering down by the cars with blood dripping down her chest and an arm missing. He was so convincing I ran out there with him, thinking that maybe I'd be faced with the scene of a grisly car crash. But there was no one there. The guy was shocked and confused and even a little embarrassed. He was so insistent about what he'd seen, he took me up to his room to show me the window. Except, it wasn't a window at all. It was a mirror. I told him he was just sleep deprived and he agreed, but left regardless. Both of us disturbed in some wordless way. You can't take all the mirrors down though. People will complain, and that's fair enough. It's not like I even have a good reason, sane or otherwise. There was just a feeling of general unease I tried to avoid by taking down any of the big ones. You know, the funny thing is, it didn't even dawn on me to take my own mirror down until recently. In my head, this was something that only affected my guests, but like I said, I've been seeing things in there, so I went to pull it down, and I know this is gonna sound stupid, it terrified me. The thought of touching it made my skin crawl and my stomach turn to lead, and I couldn't. I physically couldn't. I keep telling myself it was just a fear, but it felt worse somehow. It felt like I was looking into someone's eyes that weren't my own. All I wanted to do was turn away and ignore it, so in the end, that's what I did. It was better than the alternative. Better than quitting and leaving someone else to deal with it. Every time I go to leave, that's what holds me back. The next guy below me, he's a good man, but he isn't up to it. He has kids. How would he have coped with that happening a few years back? Although, I guess an equally good question is, how have I coped? Because it was after seeing one disappearance that I started seeing things in the mirrors. They were a nice couple, sure enough. It happens to couples sometimes. Rarely, but it can happen. As soon as they didn't check out, my heart sank, and I made the long walk up to their room. Of all the things that I expected, the drawings weren't it. You see, all over the walls were these kids' doodles. I've never seen a room like that. It was different, somehow. All around the mirror, they'd set up a barricade, complete with spikes, made from bedposts, and broken down a rifle with the barrel bent 90 degrees. Shell casings littered the floor, and a hunting knife buried into the floor. I later found a load of survivalist equipment, complete with the leaflets for a nearby shooting range. I never did find a diary or a journal to get a sense of what happened to them, but the tally they had took up a whole wall. That was the longest one I'd ever seen. 811. There were so many of them that the first few rows started to fade. I still don't know how any of it had happened, but I know the woman who went in. She was pregnant. No, I couldn't let anyone see the things I have. Finding what I found in the bathtub has left me in ruins. I couldn't leave anyone else to do the same. I see that little girl in my dreams every night, lying in that tub, cold to the touch. It took me weeks to scrub off every mention of the word mommy off the wall.